Welcome to Between Authors. I am your host, author Adrian Lopez. If you enjoyed this episode today, don't forget to leave a like and leave a comment below letting us know what you enjoyed about the episode. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification so you don't miss all the amazing authors going forward. What is it that excites us as a reader? It's finding that author or book that you may never have heard of, sort of like the treasure hunt as a reader. The goal for my podcast is to bring to you those authors or books that you may never have found that might be the treasure you've been hunting for all along. Today on episode 17, I bring to you author Vicky Ball. We're going to go over a little bit about herself, what she's published, and what she's working on in the future. Welcome to the show, Vicky.
Hiya, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Happy you're here. Why don't you give a little introduction to yourself to the viewers? Let them know a little bit about what you enjoy, what you like to do.
Yep, okay. So my name is Vicky and I live in a place called Colchester in England. And so I was previously a teacher for 16 years up till March this year. And then I finally decided that I was up for another challenge. So I'm now working at a university. So I work full time at the university, which doesn't allow a huge amount of time for writing, but I try and fit it in when I can. And I also have two teenage daughters who have been quite an inspiration to my writing. And I have a husband as well, and two cats and two rabbits. And I enjoy reading myself, so I really like reading thrillers in particular, but I do like reading a sort of a variety of things. I try and read other genres as well, because I think it's good to sort of get out there and read lots of different things. So yeah, and I enjoy hanging out with my friends and just going for walks in the woods and things like that, and yoga as well. Actually, I do really enjoy yoga.
That's great. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your influences? What influences you? Could be authors, books, could be anything else.
I take a lot of inspiration from the people around me, or influence from people around me, and because my books are kind of about teenagers, I've sort of being a teacher obviously helped, and having teenagers myself. I always say to my girls that you have to be careful what you say, because it might end up in my book. Take little lines of things that they say, and I think things like TV shows sometimes influence me. I think. There's this a show called Long Lost Family. I don't know if you have it in America, but yeah. So it's basically about people getting reunited to family members that they've never met. So they might have been adopted at birth, or even abandoned at birth, and things like that. And I really like kind of those kind of issues surrounding family and stuff like that. And so I think watching that kind of inspires me to kind of write about some of those issues. And I'm interested in sort of a lot of issues that affect young people. Like to do with their identity or family issues and things like that. So
okay, let's talk about the book Abandoned. Why don't you give the viewers a little summary of what the book's about?
So Abandoned is about, well, it starts off, it's primarily about a girl called Maddie, who's 15 years old, and she's got a mum who's an alcoholic. And it's kind of a lot to do with how she copes with, to start with anyway, how she copes with an alcoholic mum. So she feels like she's the one that's got to be always responsible, even though she's a teenager, but she doesn't really get to have a proper sort of teenage life, because her mum's sort of always off being drunk, or she's not quite with it all the time. And she she gets really fed up with this, because she's like, when do I get to be the teenager kind of thing. And then she discovers something very shocking, which kind of explains why her mum became an alcoholic. And so there's like secrets in the family, and so this kind of leads to her finding, I don't want to give too much away, but finding out things which kind of affect her identity. And she sort of goes on a sort of journey of discovery, really.
Okay. Is there a favorite scene in the book? It could be the scene in general, or just writing the scene as you're coming together with it?
So I've got a scene that's sort of fairly near the end, I suppose, where there's two characters are sort of, sort of at odds with each other, and they've just been to a funeral, and they're basically having a fight in the graveyard. And I don't know, it kind of just amused me writing it, just because it was sort of supposed to be a little sort of silly thing as well, and like, because it's not like a serious fight, but they're just sort of having a little bit of a blokes punch up kind of in the graveyard. And so yeah, that kind of was quite fun to write, because trying to make it amusing almost. But
On the opposite end, did you have a scene that was the hardest to write?
So yeah, I think, yeah, because there's an accident in my book, without giving too much away, which I don't know, I think because it's to do with a motorbike, and I suppose because I'm not a massive, well, I don't know that much about motorbikes, and so I sort of found that quite hard to sort of write technically, and so I had some beta readers that sort of said, I think you need to make it a bit more realistic, sort of the crash part of it. So that took a bit of work, and my husband, who also enjoys writing, he sort of helped me a bit with that as well, to sort of develop that to make it more realistic.
Did you, so my next question is usually, did you do any research for the book? Was that part of what you had to do, is to kind of research a little more about that side of it?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit to do with that. But I did also, because there's a disabled character in there, and I've got a friend who's also a writer who is in a wheelchair, and she was really happy to talk to me, and because I wanted to obviously make it realistic and sensitive. And so I sort of went around her house and had a little chat with her, and she was just really happy to share sort of her experiences of being disabled and how that affects her, like when she's out and about. So like some of the scenes in my book are sort of based on what sort of things she has to go through in shops and things like that. Like I think one of the examples is that she said that when she goes shopping, sometimes people like reach across her like she's not even there, just because she's in a wheelchair. And so there's a scene a bit like that in my book. And so yeah, I did do that, and a fair bit of Googling as well to do with the accident and the effects of the accident as well. So yeah, I did a bit of reading up on that, and yeah, that was mainly it, really.
You have another book, Powerless, which I
Yeah.
believe is your first book. Why don't you give a little summary of that one?
Right, yeah. So Powerless is again sort of to do with teenagers. So it's to do with two sisters, and right at the beginning we find out that the oldest sister went missing 7 years ago, and then on Christmas Eve she just turns up totally out of the blue, and she's got a younger sister who is now 15, but the older one is like 21, and she suddenly turns up and totally out of the blue, and the younger one's a bit like, wow, I sort of remember you from when I was a kid, but now it seems like you're a stranger, and what are you doing back here? And so she has lots of questions about why she's been missing, and her parents are being sort of really cagey about it, and they don't want to talk about it. And so it kind of explores the where she's been, and there's sort of issues of grooming in there as well. So it deals with sort of some heavy issues, but I try to sort of deal with things in a sensitive way, and it's not graphic at all. But yeah, it's sort of been described as gritty, I think, and hard hitting and heartbreaking in some ways. But yeah.
Did you, same question on the previous one, did you have a favorite scene in that book?
So I think my favourite scene was probably the first bit when she appears, actually, because she just knocks on the door, and then her sister opens the door, and it's like, who's this stranger? And it's the whole like how it affected her parents, as because and then it was Christmas Eve, they were decorating the tree and that kind of thing, and it's sort of like, who's this stranger that suddenly appeared with pink hair, because she's got pink dyed hair. And so yeah, that was quite sort of thinking about how emotional it would be, but also like the younger sister feeling a bit put out, and like, who's this person taking attention from me, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the opposite end, did you have the hardest scene?
Well, obviously, some of the grooming issues were sort of quite hard to write because there is sort of one scene where it's sort of it's not quite rape, but it's sort of like there's sort of a sex bit in there, which I didn't want to go into in massive detail, and it is sort of done quite sensitively. So it is sort of I don't know what word is, but yeah, so it's not gone into a huge amount of detail, so that and it is, yeah, as I say, quite sensitive. And there was also another bit where I think when I was originally writing it, I was really stuck on how to get the one of the characters to kind of follow this other car, and to start with, I had a hot wiring a car, and my publisher said, what is this, some kind of 1970s cop movie? How is she? She's a 40-year-old woman. How is she going to know how to hotwire a car? And I was like, well, she might, but so yeah, I had to sort of change that and then think about how I'm going to get around this whole issue of being able to chase the person in the car.
Yeah, and I've noticed in a lot of these interviews that's a theme where a lot of us authors kind of paint ourselves in a corner, and then you're trying to figure out how do I get out of this because it doesn't either where you want to go doesn't seem impossible from where you're at, or you kind
Yeah,
of
well,
slightly veered away from it.
yeah, well, it's actually one of my beta readers that kind of gave me the answer because she'd pointed out that these two characters had actually gone to this place separately, and she was like, well, why didn't she just go off in her own car? And I was like, oh, I didn't even spot that, which is why you have beta readers, because they're amazing things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always good to have a second pair of eyes in anything because when you're so kind of deep diving into these things, you miss a lot of stuff after a while because you're just seeing, and you'll just miss things. So it's always good to have somebody, beta readers, arc readers, just to make
Yeah,
sure there's nothing you're missing on that side.
absolutely. And I've got some amazing ones who do sort of pick out on loads of stuff and like, this is not realistic, and well, really, can't I just have this bit? But yeah, I mean, what one of my beta readers actually was my dad this time round, and he just said, I want to read it, and he's a bit OCD, so it was really helpful for spotting lots of mistakes, and so yeah, he was very good.
Research for this one. Did you do any specific research for this book?
So yeah, sort of like I did a little bit about the kind of grooming aspect, so just finding out some ways that sort of teenagers are groomed and how it would sort of go about it. And I mean, that was sort of the idea for that, I think, was based on something when I was teaching, someone just talking about it actually, how these students had just been groomed by these people online. And so that was kind of the inspiration for it. So I did do a bit of sort of research and yeah, a bit of sort of thinking back to what I'd about at school and stuff. Yeah.
So you published these two books. Has publishing changed your writing process at all? How you approach it, or how you kind of work through the process now?
Um, I think it's made me a little bit more organized with it, I think, because I mean I'm not much of a plotter, I think you're either a plotter or you sort of see how it goes. And I'm a bit more of a, start writing, see how it goes. But I think I've become a little bit more organized with, sort of chapter summaries and things like that. So and this just so that or even I start it and then maybe halfway through I might sort of start doing chapter summaries just so I know where it's going to go. I think that's quite helpful. Um, and I think having it published as well has also given me a bit more confidence in myself because, I mean, I still get amazed when people sort of give me a good review. I think, really, you actually think it's good. But so yeah, I think it's given me sort of, and I found my style. I think as well. Sort of, I've sort of learned through writing and doing it more. I think that this is the style that works for me, and it's obviously working for some reasons as well. So that's good.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I talk about a lot on here is authors finding their voice. Finding
Mm,
what your style, what your voice is,
mm,
and there'll always be the audience for your voice. They have to find you, you have to find them. But just make it your voice, the way you want to write it, the way you want to tell the story. And like you said, that's as you move through that, you kind of find that, and that's when it just comes across the most genuine, when you're in your voice.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think because I started writing, because I used to write in third person, and I started writing in first person, um, and sort of present tense, and that sort of seemed to flow better, and so I sort of continued with doing it like that.
So would you say your genre for your books is YA? Is that roughly your style, or is it a mixture of stuff?
Um, I mean, it sort of is YA, but a lot of the people who have read it have been a huge mixture of ages. I mean, I have an 80-year-old great aunt who absolutely loves it, loves Powerless. um, and a sort of a huge range of ages really. And I went to a few schools where teenagers like it. And I think what people like about my book is that it's not massively complicated in the style of writing. I don't use lots of descriptions. So I think it's kind of lots of people can enjoy it. And so I think yeah, there's just a huge wide range of people really, and probably more adults than young people, I reckon, at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume most books are multiple categories anyway. You have probably your primary, then you have maybe a subcategory, a thriller or mystery or something that crime going on in the background. So it can, it can kind of vary in terms of the age group and stuff that enjoys and reads it.
Yeah.
So before I ask you like what you're working on and stuff you're going to go forward with, so you mentioned you've been a teacher for years and you just moved on to university, and primarily you do write in, stories of teenagers, somewhere in that group, young adults on that side. Do you ever feel like at some point you will write a book that does take place maybe in the school, area, in terms of maybe university, maybe high school, but in that area, kind of taking your experience as a teacher and kind of blending that in as well?
Yeah, I mean, both of my books actually do have bits where they are at school. So I think a lot of my experiences from school as a teacher have sort of come into my books already. Yeah, I mean, because they obviously have all these issues as well, but then they go to school, and I and yeah, I'd like to think it's quite realistic because I sort of, I've been a teacher and I can sort of understand how teenagers feel, and um, but I'm thinking of in the next one maybe sort of having a university sort of setting as well.
Mhm.
So,
So do you have anything you're currently working on right now?
yeah, so I've started another book which I'm about 10,000-ish sort of words into, which is it's again sort of like teenagers, but it's going to have a boy as a main character instead this time, and it's going to be sort of to do with him getting involved in like gangs and stuff, and or a gang at the moment, and yeah, he's sort of how that is playing out in his life, and and how he's sort of dealing with that. But as with most things I write, I don't really know where it's going yet. I have some vague ideas, but it is still very, very early days at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you just kind of let the story take itself where it wants to go and just kind of go through it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I like that sort of style because I feel that if I plan too much in advance, it just takes away the creativity, and then I'm just bored with it. I don't want to do it anymore. Whereas I like to sort of see where it's going to go, and sometimes it surprises me, and I think, oh, didn't realize it was going to go this way. But
Yeah, I mean, a lot of authors have mentioned it's almost like you're getting dictated to, and you're just kind of writing it down. At some point, it went from being your original story to almost the story telling you, okay, this is where we're going to go.
yeah,
And there's a lot of mentions, a lot of times from authors where, this character popped in and all of a sudden doesn't want to leave. So now
mm,
this
mm,
character's an important character in the book. And that's like,
yeah,
again, it's something for a young writer is, don't force yourself to follow your original outline or original plot. and sometimes just let the story take you. And that sometimes is where you really get that magic of what you're writing, because you're just going on the journey with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it is really important, because I think some people sort of have quite rigid ways of doing things, and then maybe they get disappointed if they can't do exactly that. And I think, like you say, it's good to be sort of a bit more freer with it. I mean, obviously everyone has their own style.
Yeah.
But I mean, years ago I wrote a sort of another novel which hasn't been published, which was originally supposed to be about this woman, but then this sort of evil type character came into it, and my little writing group that I go to, they all love this character so much that he kind of ended up being the main character, because everyone just couldn't get enough of him. And I was like, oh, okay, so maybe that one will see the light of day one day.
Future, what do you have planned for the future? Is there any goals you would like to do future in terms of maybe writing things or stuff you would like to accomplish?
um so in terms of writing, I mean, I'd like to sort of get a few more books out there. I mean, time wise, it's challenging at the moment, and having the energy to do it as well. But yeah, hopefully I'll be able to get some more out. I don't know. I've sort of toyed with the idea as well of writing sort of like screenplays or something like that as well, because I'm quite, I like writing dialogue and stuff, and I sort of think that might work. But I don't know. It's only sort of a brief thought I've had, and but yeah, and job wise, I'm happy in my job at the moment, so I've got no plans to move on from that.
Do you find yourself almost like making an appointment or making time for you to write, or do you just kind of say, okay, I have a little bit of the energy to do it today, I have some time, let me do it? Or do you give yourself a routine, like, I want to try to do at least 4 times a week, a certain period of time?
Mm. I don't really have much of a routine. I mean, I sort of do it when I've got the energy or when I have the time, which isn't a huge amount at the moment. But I tend to do it mainly on weekends. But sometimes it's like I'll have a free afternoon and I think, right, that's it, I'm going to write. But then the problem is sometimes it doesn't always want to flow at that moment, and so it can be
Yeah.
quite annoying if I have this time and I think I could write now, but I can't actually write. It's just really annoying. So it is mainly sort of weekends and things like that at the moment.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier that you do like to read a bunch of different genres that you enjoy. Do you ever feel at some point you may stretch into a different genre and go away from your current kind of where you're at, or do you think even if you do stretch out, it'll still kind of be within that wheelhouse of what you're working on?
Um, I have sort of written other things, but I think what I'm doing now works best for me. I mean, I don't know, possibly might like to sort of go more into sort of crime thrillers, but oh, hmm, there you go. You disappeared for a minute.
Yeah, I know it blank out for a second.
um, yeah, so like crime thrillers, and maybe, but I'm not sure if I don't know if I have the complete knowledge of how crime, how like police and that work. And yeah, there was a course once that I was going to go on, which was about crime writing, but then it got cancelled in the end, which was a shame. So I mean, I'd love to do something like that. And I don't know, maybe something like that. Or I also like history as well, so maybe historical fiction, but I
Mhm.
feel like that would involve quite a lot more research and yeah.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's almost very consistent is that there's a lot of readers that just know a ton of stuff, right? And if you don't do the research sometimes and miss certain things or misquote certain things, it'll get caught, right? So sometimes some of those genres you got to make sure you put in the work and really do the research to satisfy all the readers that may pick it up.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like with historical, someone would go, "Oh, that's not how it happened." But then, I mean, we were talking about this one about my writing friends, who she's writing a sort of historical fiction at the moment, and we said maybe if you say it's like inspired by rather than so that it gives you a bit of leeway then. But
Yeah, I think you would almost have to because yeah, I mean, they'll catch everything, everything that you thought you could sneak through. It's not going to happen.
yeah, no, absolutely.
So I just want to remind the viewers, I will leave all the links below for Vicky, for her books and website or anything else she has for you to be able to find her and contact her. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and leave a comment for either Vicky or myself if you have any questions, or just let us know if you enjoyed the video in general. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification so you don't miss all the amazing authors coming up. I really want to thank you for coming on, Vicky. I really enjoyed this, learning a little more about your books and what you're working on, and kind of where you want to go in the future. And I truly do appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's been really fun. Yeah, it's good to have a chat. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you again, viewers, for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Goodbye.